The thing about Spain is when we set out to make the programme and write the book, people said, well, there aren't enough gardens in Spain, you know, because everybody's been to Spain, but they've been on holiday and they've been to the south. But, of course, Spain is vast. And when you start to travel around it, you discover there's a whole world of gardens, and incredibly diverse, too.
And that diversity is really important because it's probably too easy for us to say, of course, the Spanish gardens are beautiful. They've got loads of sunshine. They've got a bit of rain. You know, of course they grow well. It's not that
Not like that
simple,
at all. I mean, the middle of Spain, the vast middle of Spain, is incredibly hot in summer, unbelievably cold in winter. I mean, minus 15 for weeks on end. It's dry. When it does rain, it floods in a way that we can't imagine, and we've seen that recently in Valencia. Yeah. And there's no decent soil. I mean, we take for granted we can grow anything we like. They really have to struggle, so they have to be invented.
And lots of the gardens are like a mini history lesson, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because you see influences actually from all over the world.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in Spain particularly, you have the Islamic influence because for 800 years they were under Islamic rule. But, you know, all gardens are this sort of layer upon layer of history and experience and life, and you know, they keep coming through. And you see it. You can't... Just to go and see it with our eyes today is actually to miss the point. I think gardens are sort of living history, and I love them for that as much as anything else, really.
And not only the history, but, I mean, you can also see it in the planting as well, and the way that they have adapted and survived and naturalised in each of these different environments.
Well, they have. I mean, somebody once said to me in Spain that the problem with British gardens is that you have too many plants. Yes, exactly. That was the reaction. What? And what he meant is you're like billionaires going shopping. You can have anything you want. You can buy anything you want. You can plant it, it'll grow. Yeah. You whinge about your weather, but the truth is you don't know you're born. You know, it's never too hot, it's never too cold, it's never too dry, it's never too wet. Everything will grow, pretty much. Whereas in Spain, practically nothing will grow, so they have to be inventive. And so they really have to think about it. And, you know, it was fascinating when we were doing the book and the series, is travelling around and you slowly build up this very complicated picture of a country that has such diversity and has had to adapt in so many ways.
What does that mean in practice, though? I mean, you paint that picture then of, you know, really cold in winter, really hot, dry, you know, drought conditions in summer. How do you plant a garden for that
What
climate?
you do is you cut your plants down. So some gardens will only have 6 or 7 plants.
OK.
And they will use shape rather than colour, perhaps. So you have wonderful... I mean, we call it topiary, but it's more sculpting. So you sculpt plants. You use the trees that will grow. You know, home oaks you see olive trees, and you repeat them. Whereas we think, oh, no, the more plants you have, the better. If you've got 50 different varieties of a plant, then you're a really good gardener. There, if you've got... You know, if you can just make 5 plants grow really well and look good, that's a skill. It's just a different approach.
So what can we take from this, then, from Spanish gardens to apply here at home? Maybe don't try so hard? Yeah,
I think that our whole view about gardens and horticulture is fixated on plants and the variety of plants, whereas actually what we've got to think about is making spaces and places. And if that's just some green hedges and some green grass, if it works and is beautiful, then it's a good garden. Whereas we tend to measure the worth of a garden by the variety and number of plants. And I think maybe we need to rethink that a little.
Has doing this trip made you think about Longmeadow any differently?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is people, again, always say to me, well, what plants did you bring back? I think we've got to deal with climate change. I mean, that's really the big thing, is that we're all getting more rain when it rains, we're getting more drought when it's dry, we're getting more heat, we're getting more cold. And it's coming erratically and in extreme ways. And I think for gardeners, the really hard thing is to have plants that can cope with extreme wet in winter and extreme dry in summer in the same year. Whereas up till now, you know, I could give you a list of plants to grow in wet conditions or in dry conditions, but to cover both equally well, that's more tricky. And we're having to adapt. And I think it's a process. I mean, nobody quite knows what's happening or how much it's happening, what's a blip. We all want to sort of make it neat and measured. It's actually rather crazy and erratic, and we're having to learn. So I think we're in a time of change, and that's sort of interesting, sort of scary.